Hey, what's up everybody, this is Muth24, and today I'm going to take a look at the third proper volume in the current Guardians of the Galaxy run, written by Brian Michael Bendis. This is actually the fourth release in that series because the X-Men Guardians crossover happens before this, but in terms of actual numbered entries, this is the third collection of the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. And I think that kind of makes sense considering that in my review of the X-Men crossover I mentioned how much, in the Trial of Jean Grey there, how much that's more focused on the X-Men and the Guardians are sort of there more for the setting. Sort of the cosmic angle stuff, and the story itself is mainly about the X-Men. But here it is, again, focusing back on the Guardians, which I definitely appreciate because there was a decent gap in time of release between the Trial of Jean Grey crossover and this one. I know the next volume is actually just around the corner. This one came out, I believe, middle of November, and the next one comes out, I think, by the end of this month. I'm not positive on that, but I think it comes out March or April. But anyways, as the title implies here, Guardians Disassembled, this issue sees the Guardians kind of split into a bunch of individual areas across the galaxy here. And it also, as you can see here on the front, does feature Agent Venom, Flash Thompson, and then Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. Now, there's only, I believe, 4 proper issues of Guardians of the Galaxy in here, at least the current run, but there's a bunch of extra stuff in the back that kind of rounds out this collection and makes it a little bit more meaty than previous Guardians of the Galaxy releases, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But looking at the art here, I really do like how sort of chaotic it is. I mentioned before how I'm not exactly hot on all of these trade-back collections, or hardcover collections, as is the case here, featuring all of the characters on the front. But this one's a little bit different in the fact that, one, you have a nice little spotlight there on Venom kind of in the center. You have all the characters getting ready to fight and kind of in the middle of battle there. You also have some nice little teases in the background of other stuff that's going to be happening in this collection. You have the original Guardians of the Galaxy around the outside there. Again, I mentioned Carol Danvers, and the fact that we've got sort of this space backdrop in the top there is sort of a nice way of getting a lot of color and a lot of images into this cover art, at least I think. So looking at the spine of it, pretty basic. Just says Volume 3 there. We've got Star-Lord's little profile there. And then on the back, of course, we have Carol Danvers using her powers. And actually, reading this, I had previously had some interest in reading the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel stuff, which I already did a review for. You can look that up on my channel if you missed it. It's one of the most recent reviews I've done. But before, I had some interest in reading her, and this sort of solidified, this along with Avengers Endless Wartime were the two that kind of solidified my desire to read a proper Carol Danvers Captain Marvel story. And I'm really glad that I picked that up because it does a nice job of sort of walking the middle ground between cosmic stuff and Earth-based superhero antics. But of course, as you can see here, this comic starts off with a bang, jumps right into the thick of it. And the first issue here, I don't believe it was a free comic book day thing, but I remember reading it as a free download on my Marvel Comics app on my phone. And this is an introduction of Agent Venom into the Guardians of the Galaxy. Basically, Iron Man, Tony Stark, talks him into sort of becoming an ambassador for the Avengers on the cosmic front. And it's pretty brief, but it does a lot in terms of sort of catching people up on what's going on with the Guardians. And if you hadn't read the previous volumes, you could basically read that, get a general idea of where we're at. It doesn't really go into detail with the ties to Thanos Imperative and Age of Ultron that I mentioned in the review of Angela, the second volume, but it does sort of familiarize people with the characters that are at play here. Obviously, if you've seen the film, you're going to know the main players in the Guardians themselves, at least, in terms of Rocket, Drax, Gamora, Star-Lord, and Groot. We go back to the whole King J, son of Spartax, is a jerk, and a very selfish guy and not the best dad in the galaxy. We get to go back to nowhere and sort of explore the markets there. And I like the fact that we're sort of grounding the Guardian story in these familiar areas, but sort of exploring new angles of them. I definitely appreciate that. I like the fact that Venom is sort of a stranger in a strange land in the sense that this Venom at least has never been outside of Earth as far as I know, but at the same time his using the symbiote and having these alien powers I think is a great fit for the Guardians Company. Unfortunately we don't get to see a whole lot of Agent Venom in this storyline. We get to see him at the beginning and kind of at the end, but most of it is about the main Guardian team themselves. This particular storyline, again, sort of spotlights the individual Guardians members, and there's sort of a bigger play going on here, but at the end of the day, it doesn't amount to, I guess, a whole lot more than what you might expect. I think once you know that certain characters are involved, it's not going to be too terribly difficult to figure out where this is going. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it is a shorter story than the previous ones. And like I said, it's sort of a new jumping in point for people who had not previously read the Guardian stuff up to this point. But we do have Gladiator just kind of being a jerk. Again, Gladiator's a weird character because he's so inconsistent in terms of his depiction depending on which story we're reading. In War of Kings, he was really cool, and then I totally understood where he was coming from on a lot of stuff. And then in the Trial of Jean Grey, he was sort of a shallow and unintelligent jerk. And here it's a little bit of both. I mean, he's definitely prideful, and he squares off with Drax here and all that, but he's not as complicated of a character as he was in the War of Kings stuff, which is a little unfortunate, because I definitely like the way they presented him there. But like I said, they don't really show Venom a whole lot, except for at the very beginning, at the very end. And Captain Marvel does show up to do some heroics, which is pretty cool. And actually, this particular collection at least, is almost more about her than it is Agent Venom. I do like the fact that it is setting up for future stuff with Venom, because they had announced before this one came out that he was going to go back to the planet of the symbiotes, and they were going to explore that again. With obviously Flash Thompson's perspective. So I'm really excited to see what they do with that. And I don't know if it's going to be in the next Guardians collection or if it's going to be its own thing. But I'm definitely excited to see what they do with that. Then the extra stuff they have in here. They have the sort of origin story for Groot back when he was on his home of Planet X, and how he kind of got in a fight with his own kind in defending these little mammalian creatures that sort of kept everything going on their planet. They were sort of maintenance creatures, and some of the other people or kids Groot's age would pick on them and kill them basically for fun, and Groot didn't like that, and so he's basically banished from his home planet for picking a fight with his own people, which kind of sucks, but it gives you more of a reason to sort of care about Groot, and I believe they're going to be doing a Groot spin-off series in the future as well. Now, they're doing Rocket and they're doing Star-Lord, but I believe Groot and Gamora are both getting their own as well. Then there's a spin-off comic for the original Guardians of the Galaxy, the ones from 3014 there. These guys did have a pretty important hand in the 2008 Guardians of the Galaxy run, which I'll do a review of in the near future. But I believe they are getting their own new series as well. I'm not sure if it's a limited series or it's ongoing, but if I remember, it's just called Guardians 3000. So it's a return to the original team, and it's kind of cool to see them come back. Again, much like the Groot one, this is not terribly long. It's kind of just a refresher for people who maybe missed that stuff back in the day. Then we have a Carol Danvers Captain Marvel storyline. Again, kind of exploring her as a character, her involvement with the Avengers, and you'll notice there's a very different art style for each of these, and I like that. I definitely like the sort of more gritty and dark take that we have for this one, with it being her sort of wrestling with her own place in the Avengers ranks, and sort of, teetering over into the cosmic stuff a little bit too. And then we have the first appearance of Agent Venom in the Spider-Man comics as well. I don't necessarily mind the fact that they put these in the back of the comic. I think that, especially for me being so familiar with the Agent Venom stuff, having read all of them before this point, that it kind of makes sense to just slap that in the back as it's a side note. You don't really need to know that much about it. But I do really enjoy the fact that they show very different styles of Venom's suit. In the flashback there, it's sort of the more Mad Max, Black Ops style, and then in the Guardian stuff, it's sort of this like almost cosmonaut, spacesuit looking thing, which is pretty cool. Have some line art here of different pages. Have some of the cover variants there, and then that's basically it for this collection. Like I said, the story's not nearly as deep as it could be, but I do like the fact that it sort of presents a new jumping on point for readers who maybe hadn't picked up on the Guardian stuff, because the time that this came out was basically around the same time that the Guardians of the Galaxy movie was coming out on Blu-ray and DVD. So it's kind of the perfect time for new readers to jump into the Guardian story, and considering that Guardians, I believe, was one of the best grossing movies of last year, obviously the comics are going to be pushing out more numbers this year and next, and foreseeably into the future with the Guardian sequel coming out down the road and all that. So I would definitely recommend it if you are looking to get into the Guardian story, or if you've been following the recent stuff that has been coming out from Brian Michael Bendis and the Marvel Now line. It's definitely a fun read. I appreciate the fact that it goes into some new territory there. I'm really looking forward to what they do with the fourth volume. I kind of know some stuff that's going to be major plot points with that, dealing with the end of Thanos Imperative and the closing of the Cancerverse. And I believe it ties into Original Sin as well, which I'm not super well versed in Original Sin. But that said, still looking very much forward to the fourth volume. And definitely recommend this as a solid read. So that's pretty much it for this review. And with that, I will see you guys next time.